Hey everyone, it's Dr. Glenn Vo. I am super excited to bring on one of our newest sponsors, but someone who I've worked with for years. And if you went to school, dental school in Dallas or in Texas for that matter, you probably worked with him and you probably listened to a lecture. All right, before we get into this next episode, I'd like to give a shout out to one of our premier sponsors, Wallace Specialty Insurance. Now, I actually use them for myself. And when you're thinking about insurance to cover you, right, whether that be disability, whether that be malpractice, or any other kind of insurance, look at Wallace Specialty Insurance. They have been working with dentists for over 25 years. Reach out to them, get a free consultation, and ask them for the Nifty Thrifty deal. Wallace Specialty Insurance. It is Kyle Wallace with Wallace Specialty Insurance. Kyle, how are you? Welcome back to the group.
I am great, and I'm really kind of happy to be here with you today, not talking about the pandemic, because the last time we did something like that was right when that was getting going, and we were all very, very scared. So
my gosh,
I'm hoping we have fun today.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you what, your live stream, it was probably I have to tell you, Kyle, it's probably one of the most viewed streams that we ever had in our group, is because everything you shared was something that, was so helpful, but also we went through something that's never happened before and hopefully not for a very long time. But I want to share a story. So, Kyle Wallace, the way I worked with Kyle is, when I graduated dental school, I needed to work with someone who I trusted when it came to disability and malpractice insurance. And I listened to Kyle lecture in our class multiple times. Most of my classmates were working with him. I was like, okay, I feel comfortable there. But I'll tell you what here, you don't know how valuable and how important a relationship with someone like Kyle, someone who, helps you with your insurance. You don't know how valuable it is until you actually get in trouble. So I'm going to share a little story here. Had a patient who, and I remember these things, right? So for those who are watching, you probably remember all the patients who are mad at us, who threatened to sue us, right? All those patients, we never forget about those patients. And it had something to do with something that wasn't even my fault, right? But they wanted a refund. They were going to sue me. I didn't know what to do. I talked to my colleagues. They gave some advice. And then I finally they said, my wife looked at me and says, why don't you talk to Kyle? I was like, yeah, but he just gets me the insurance. That's it. She says, no, you need to talk to Kyle. I call up Kyle. I remember I was apologizing. I was like, oh, I don't want to waste your time. I just laid out the story. I was stressed out. And Kyle walked me through the whole process. We dealt with the patient. I didn't get sued, and everything was good. And from that point on, luckily, I didn't have any more issues. But whenever I had a question, I always reached out to Kyle. I'll send him an email, and I'll send him a novel. I'd send him many novels. And Kyle, what you always said is, Doc, why don't you just get on the phone with me? And for me, that's just such a breath of fresh air, because everyone is always so busy, right? But he always made the time there. And that's why I have him here today, because whether you are a new dentist, we have a lot of new dentists in this group, or whether you're someone who's been practicing for a while, for a long time, you're going to run into these issues. And I wanted to talk about issues with patients and when they want to sue you and all those things. I wanted to talk to Kyle because, Kyle, you've probably seen or heard almost everything, right?
I think I have, and then every once in a while something comes up and it's new, and that's kind of exciting because after 25 years of doing this, seeing something new is kind of makes my day. But you're right, I think I've seen most everything, and you're right, the experience that you had, and it pleases me to hear you talk about it, because thank you for saying that. I found early on when I started, working with dentists exclusively back in 1997, that there was a little bit of a gap between what happens in a practice, what can happen on a daily basis, and what the insurance company's there to do. When you go to, it's like the old hammer and nail thing. When you go to the insurance company, their claim staff, their lawyers on staff, they're all very, very good. But they're there to address the formal situation that develops. They're there to say, well, that's terrible, that's happening to you. We've got your back when something happens. If you get a letter from an attorney or something like that, call us. And I just felt like there had to be a better way. There had to be a way to stop the letter from the attorney coming, a way to mitigate in the middle so it doesn't escalate to the insurance company into something formal. Plus, I also knew, because of the number of clients I had and the people I talked to about that it's really scary. It's scary for a doctor when a patient's angry or when a patient's threatening. And, we go into that fight or flight mode in our brain. We get very nervous, we get very scared, and it's hard to think rationally. So, it's one of the jobs I still remain. I've been very fortunate over the last 25 years. The agency's grown a lot. We have, over 6,000 clients, and most of the day-to-day is handled by my team members. But one job I've kept is the job of what we call claims counseling, of taking those calls and those emails from clients who have had, are in the middle of a disagreement or a threat from a patient, but that threat hasn't escalated. So, kind of talking about that, the first thing when somebody calls me or emails me, one of the first things I usually get is a message from them saying, "Hey, they're angry and they told me I'm going to hear from their lawyer."
Hey, wait, are you using me as an example, Kyle? Because that sounds like exactly what I sent you one of my first messages, followed by like a novel. But yeah, generally that's what happens. A patient's, hey, the patient wants to sue me now for something. I don't know what to do.
Exactly. And so the thing about that is, when somebody says to you, "Hey, you're going to hear from my lawyer," you go, "Oh my God, I'm going to hear from their lawyer." But the reality is, they're most likely not going to sue you. And they most likely don't have a lawyer. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, and I'm an entrepreneur. We own businesses. Mm-hmm. We work with lawyers from time to time. We need to. We are lawyers, even if we have lawyers, they're not plaintiff lawyers. They're not. And our patients, if they have lawyers, and most don't, what they would call a lawyer on retainer, they're going to have to go out and find a lawyer. And so the reality of the situation, and why it's probably not, is because, well, we see the billboards, for accident attorneys as we drive down the highway. But let's throw attorneys a little love. Attorneys are a part of our society, and they're an integral part of our society. And there are times when we all need them. So I'm not an attorney basher, but attorneys are business people, just kind of like you and I. You're not going to practice dentistry at a loss. You're not going to work all day long and say, "Man, I worked all day long. I paid my staff. I bought materials, my time, and I lost $500 today." Because you're not going to be in business very long.
You're not going to be in business that long, yeah.
Exactly. And attorneys, plaintiff attorneys, same thing. When a patient goes to marketing a case to a plaintiff attorney, the first thing a plaintiff attorney has to determine is there any value to the case? Is there enough money in the case for me to take it? And then, how cut and dry is it? How easy is this to win? So, for the most part, a plaintiff attorney is going to need a case to generate, $35,000, $40,000 to make it worthwhile to them to take the case. And it's because these plaintiff attorneys, unlike the lawyers you and I use, where when we send them anything, we know we're going to be paying them $300, $350 an hour for their work, and they're going to bill us, and that's the way it works. Plaintiff attorneys take cases on a contingency basis, which means that they're taking the case for free. They're footing the bill for all of the expenses, and they're only going to get something if they win. So right away, we've got a situation in dentistry where even when there is an injury or an obvious error, it's generally not very expensive.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the cases and the problems that you have with patients are not cut and dry. They're not, you're obviously wrong, the patient's right, or you're obviously right, the patient's wrong. There's some gray in there. And so, because of the gray, the more gray there is, the harder it is for the attorney to take the case. So right away, if you or any of the people listening today have an issue with a patient, and the patient says they're going to sue them, right away in your head, calm yourself down and go, you know what? That's probably not what's going to happen.
Wait. So you're saying don't send an email at midnight, freaking out and sending a novel to the person you're doing insurance, like kind of like what I did, right? Like I sent an email like at midnight, freaking out, sent you an email. Like, yeah, I should have took your advice then, just calm down there. But again, that's a testament to you, Kyle. The fact that you sent me an email back the very next morning and asked to get on a call. But yeah, it's that's good advice to calm down, because I'll tell you what, when the first time they said they wanted to sue me, I was freaking out. I sent you that novel at midnight, wanting to talk to you right away.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what though, if writing about it makes you calmer, then by all means do that. Anything, but the most important thing is whatever meditation or activity you do to calm yourself down, because uh, most likely it's not going to be an issue. Now, that's not to say it's not something you want to deal with, you know, and that's why I want people to call me when something like this happens, because patients do have things that they can do. You know, they do. They do have an arsenal of weapons in their that's at their disposal, and they can use those against you. So even though they're not going to sue you, and I want people to know right away, that's probably not going to happen. There's one-offs to that. That's why I say probably. Very serious cases are going to involve lawyers. Every once in a while, you're going to run into a patient who just happens to have a brother-in-law that's a plaintiff attorney or something like that. So there are one-offs, but for the most part, no, they're not. But what can they do? Okay, they can make a state board complaint. Nobody likes that.
Mm-hmm.
They can also mount a social media attack against you. Those are weapons that angry patients can use. Now, state board complaint, obviously that's, you and I are here in Texas, but the process is pretty much the same anywhere else in the country. The patient makes a complaint to the state board. The state board is obligated to investigate, and in most cases, the state boards in those states, being a licensing bureau and policing the Dental Practices Act in their states, are also looking at things such as record keeping and documentation and other things unrelated to the clinical dentistry that is involved. So a state board complaint in itself can be stressful. Social media attacks too. We all kind of live and die a little bit, by our online reviews,
Yeah.
and rankings. And so it doesn't mean we don't want to address the situation. We just want to say, hey, we're not getting sued here. So, that's what angry patients can do. Now, when a patient's angry, I really do advise that the doctor, talk to the patient themselves if they feel comfortable doing so. I mean, you can certainly delegate it to someone in your office that you think would be better at it, but the patients always feel a lot more respected.
Yeah.
If the doctor themselves calls the patient and addresses the situation. Now, there's a special way to do this. Because, when we're nervous and when we're in a adversarial situation, we all want to get our points in.
Yeah.
Well, what about this? Well, what about that? The way you speak with an angry patient as the doctor, though, is different. Basically, you want to call the patient and say, hey, look, I understand you're unhappy. and I'm here to listen to you. You know, however is organic or real for you to say that. I'm here to listen to you, and then you shut up and you let them talk, and you let them talk until they are done. And the reason for that is they won't listen to you until after they've said everything they want to say. So that means you're going to say what you say, and then you might 20 minutes later um, actually get to say something. And by the way, I employ the same strategy when I'm talking with a doctor who's got an issue with a patient, because they don't want me to talk until they've told me everything. Either they've sent me the novel, or
Again, I'm wondering if you're just bringing back an instance that we had too, where I was just again so stressed out, and I wrote Kyle a novel about a patient, and we got on the phone, and it seemed like I talked for about 30 minutes, and I finally let him have a word in. But I will say, as someone who went through that, it definitely made me feel a lot better when I talked to you.
well, good. Yeah. You know, and to your point, the patient's going to feel a lot better after they've told you everything. They've gone, okay, Dr. Vo's on the phone with me. He's listened to everything I've said, and I can't think of anything else to say to him. And then they're ready to listen to you. And a lot of times the situation can be managed that way. The patient feels heard. Um, you've been able to address their concerns. Often that ends with, okay, I get it now. I'm coming back in the office. I'm sorry for the disagreement. And we're done. Now, maybe we aren't done then. Maybe it's still, okay, I hear you, but I'm done with you and I want my money back. Or I want my money back plus gas money and lunch money and what I missed, work money and all of that, because people like to try to build that.
Yeah.
So again, then that moves into the negotiation phase. How do you negotiate with an angry patient? Well, first of all, you ask them what they want, because you don't want to be the one throwing out, the offer. You want to ask them what they want, because one, they may just want an apology.
Yeah.
They may not want as much as you think they want, but you ask them what they want, because again, people feel respected when you ask them that, and let them tell you. Now, even if you were thinking in your mind, I was going to give them $1,000 back, and they said, I want $750. Don't jump on it. The minute somebody says, this is what I want, you say, sure, here, I'll give it to you. They're going to feel like they didn't ask for enough.
Yeah.
And they're going to backpedal. So anytime a patient says, this is what I want, the correct response is, I hear you. Thank you for letting me know. I'm going to take that under consideration. Can I think about that a day or two? Because then when you come back the next day or whatever you've promised, because you always want to set a time you're going to get back to them. But when you come back to them, they're going to then feel like, wow, I really kind of backed him into a corner and I've gotten my way, as opposed to he or she agreed to my offer so quickly, I don't think I asked for enough. So, that's the easy, that's kind of the way to do it. And then, of course, getting a release is always a good thing. A signed release, I've got a signed release I've used for years. It's been updated a couple of times. It's one page, it's ironclad. And generally at the end of my conversations, I'll send it out. Now, that doesn't mean in every single case you need to get a release. There are times, I like releases, but there are times, few, but times, when I say to clients that, hey, in this case, I don't think you need a release. Just based on the situation, let's just give them our money back and cross our fingers. But the purposes of the release is, one, yes, the release says that once you sign the release, you can't sue. But we're not really concerned about suits, as we talked about up front. What we're concerned about is somebody getting their money back and then going on Facebook and other social media outlets and just slamming you. And one thing about the release is it stops that too. Basically, the release says once we're done, and you can't talk about this anymore. So, prevents the social media attack. Now, we don't say it in the release, but the release is written in such a way that you feel like that the patient signing it feels like they can't take any possible action against you. And one thing I need to counsel is that even when a patient signs a release, they can still make a complaint to the state board.
Yeah.
They can't sign away that right. But we don't put in the release that you can't do anything but make a complaint to the state board. We want the release to read as if it's ironclad. So,
because if you put that clause in there, they're going to do it.
You're going to do it. That's right. And so now, in 25 years, I can count on two fingers how many times a patient signed a release and still made a complaint to the state board, and that's thousands of releases I've helped people with. So it's not a big risk, but I always bring it out. So, and then then there are also obviously there's the cases where you've done something wrong, and so this is another situation where people get confused. Let's say it's got to be really black and white. It's got to be a situation where you pulled the wrong tooth, or you meant to pull out a primary tooth and you got the bud for the permanent tooth, or something something that's obvious and an accident. It's okay to say I'm sorry. A lot of people are worried that I'm sorry is going to mean that I'm guilty and I've prejudiced my defense, and all sorts of bad things are going to happen because I said I'm sorry. If you made an obvious error, and I mean obvious, no question about it, one of the best things you can do is say to the patient, "Hey, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I've got your back. We'll work through this together," because that also prevents lawsuits. That means that most rational people go, you know what? I'm human. I make mistakes. She made a mistake. They've taken responsibility for it. They said they've got my back. Let's go. So that's really, kind of my little, my little 10, 15 minute talk on kind of how to deal with an angry patient. Now, I'll end that by saying, for my clients, I want them to call me. I don't want them doing this alone. Even with the information we've talked about here, every situation is a little bit different, and it always helps to talk to somebody and have somebody else say, "Yep, I hear you. This happened," and ask some questions and say, "Okay, in this case, here's the best strategy for dealing with this." So don't go it alone if you don't have to.
I totally agree with that, and I will say this too. It also makes you feel better, puts your mind at ease when you're talking to someone who's heard these situations before, who's seen almost everything. The experience goes a long way. And again, like when Kyle was explaining a couple of things there, to this day, what he just walked through as far as talking to patients, having them talk, listening, not saying anything, finding out what they want. All these things that Kyle, laid out, he's actually mentored me and walked me through situations. And this is exactly how I deal with angry patients. Exactly how he laid it out. And what I've noticed, and unfortunately, I've gotten really good at it. So now if any of my associates or my wife makes someone mad, I'm the one who has to talk. But the patients always want to talk to the doctor, right? Like, yes, you could delegate it to someone who's really good, who can really talk to patients, but when it's the actual practice owner, it takes it a whole new level. And so literally what Kyle laid out is actually how I deal with patients that are upset. And Kyle, it's true, right? Like you just said it yourself, that if you want to avoid getting sued, you have to kind of be proactive there and start working. You can't just like, oh, someone's going to threaten to sue me, and then you just kind of leave it alone. You actually have to be pretty proactive, right? And talk to the patient.
You do. You don't want to hide from the patients. People know when you're hiding from them. I mean, if they send an email and you don't respond, if they call and you don't answer, people get frustrated because, again, they want to be heard. In the risk management courses, that I teach. In fact, I'm flying to Albuquerque tomorrow to do a risk management course for the oral surgeons in New Mexico. But in the risk management courses that we teach, the number one, what we always point out is the number one reason for a potential lawsuit is miscommunication or the lack of communication. So, if the patient's reaching out to you because they have an issue, don't be scared to talk about it. It's obviously it's uncomfortable. Anytime somebody's angry, for most of us normal people, getting into an adversarial relationship or an uncomfortable conversation is not really what we look for on a day-to-day basis. But avoiding it a lot of times worse.
Yeah, no, I love that. So guys, if you don't have this, and I want to say this, I want to put Kyle on the spot here. Look, if you don't have this type of relationship with the broker or insurance person that you work with when it comes to your malpractice, if you don't have this type of relationship, then you're missing out. Okay, I'm just telling you right now, you're missing out, because again, Kyle takes it to a different level, and that's why people like myself, most of my classmates, most of everyone that I went to dental school with, they work with Kyle. This is what we're used to. This is what we expect. And so if you don't have someone there who's mentoring you and talking to you and making sure you stay calm, right? Then you need to rethink things there. But also, here's another thing too. We were talking about just malpractice issues there, but Kyle, you identified that when we graduate from dental school, we open a practice, malpractice is just one little aspect of the type of coverage we need as a practice owner. So could you just briefly go through some of the things that you help practice owners like myself, just to make sure that we are covered? Because at the end of the day, you're dealing with patients. It's a hard enough job. You're dealing with staff. That's a hard enough job, right? You got to pay them. That's a hard enough job. The last thing you want to do is have a blind spot somewhere, and if something happens, you're not covered. So Kyle, could you just go over that real quick?
Sure, be happy to. Again, we started the agency to offer all lines of insurance coverage that a dentist might need in their business life or personal life. Early on, as you pointed out, malpractice insurance was my first love and what I concentrated on, and it's still my favorite thing. This is in insurance, but what I found early on also was that dentists who started a practice, like yourself, would have to buy insurance from several different outlets and not really know how all of those fit together, or if they were really getting what they needed. It's small business in the insurance world, any small business, and your average dental practice is considered a small business from insurance standards. Gets kind of thrown into, in a big insurance agency, gets thrown into the bullpen of small insurance processing, no service, more of a commodity type treatment, and so we tried to move that to a situation where even as a small business, you've got a personalized experience as opposed to buying a commodity. And we try to treat all of our clients as being special, and try to put together an insurance program specific to their practice and to their life. So we work with insurance companies that provide office insurance and workers' compensation and disability and life insurance and business overhead expense coverage and employment practices liability, cyber liability, all of those things. But most of them are programs designed specifically for dental practice. A lot of those programs are also exclusive to our agency or a small number of agents that we know. So you can't buy them anywhere. So we try to make that a very personalized experience, and we try to also help our clients find real benefit to insurance. For example, we still have a couple of minutes.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we have plenty. Again, this is really good stuff. And guys, if I'll put the information that way to reach out to Kyle. But again, if if whoever you're working with, if they don't have the knowledge that Kyle has, if they don't have the level of like service and commitment to your practice, then I want you to rethink things, because again, this is what I've always known working with Kyle, right? That I know that if I ever have any issues, he has my back. But also, look, I know teeth, right? But I don't know what kind of coverages I need. I don't know what I need once I get to a different stage in my life. That's why it's good to have Kyle around here and just to let me know, because that's the thing. What you might get right when you graduate, and I will tell you this right now, what I got when I graduated and I worked as an associate is completely different when I opened my practice and completely different now. So that is something to keep in mind for those who are actually working with Kyle right now. I want to throw that out there. If you haven't talked to him in a while, I think you should just send a quick email. Preferably nothing like too dramatic like I normally do with him, but send him an email, because chances are you might be at a level where you might need some new products or new coverage. So just wanted to say that real quick, because again, there's a lot of people who, based on all the likes here, that's works with Kyle. Just let you guys know, if you're for the ones that are watching, if you're working with Kyle right now, you haven't talked to him in a while, you need to reach out like I do just every so often to see if things have changed and I need new coverage.
Agreed.
Especially the disability, right, Kyle?
Well, yeah, disability is really important, but it's really, really expensive. Let's face it, it's one of the most expensive things that you buy. And one of the things I've noticed over the years is that that there's a lot of pushback to trying to advise someone to increase their disability insurance benefit to the point that it would replace completely their income. And for one thing, you can't replace it completely. Most disability companies will only insure your income to about 85%. Mm-hmm. But most people don't even go there. And because when you think about it, for a lot of us out there, we're talking about a benefit that we need in excess of $25,000 a month, even adjusted for taxes. And that's an expensive disability policy, and most people aren't going to go there. But getting as close as possible, or at least getting a benefit that you think you could reduce your lifestyle to be able to at least live comfortably at, is important. So, we review people's disability policies that they bought when they got out of school, even if they didn't buy it from us, and help them make adjustments to it, make sure it's right. That's one of the things we're happy to do. But when you talk about disability, kind of as a kind of tangent to that is, one of the things that we put together with some friends, it's a national program, is an umbrella program. Personal umbrella program, specifically for dentists. And it's a group umbrella program, and it's the most inexpensive umbrella program I've ever seen. It's associated with one specific malpractice insurance carrier, and we do work with them all, by the way. We work with almost every carrier active in the dental community, but we have one specific carrier that does have associated with it a personal umbrella program. And personal umbrella is one of the things I think is very important to especially self-employed dentists, but all dentists in general, that kind of gets overlooked. We buy our personal line, our homeowners and auto insurance from the Gecko or State Farm, or, hopefully from me, but not always, but, we buy that. And we don't think about the umbrella aspect unless somebody comes to us to talk about it. And then most of us really don't know that there's a difference between an umbrella policy and what we call a following form excess liability policy. And I won't really go into that too much, but
I might have to bring you back on, Kyle, to talk about that, because now you got piqued my interest there.
Well, here's one of the things that I think is very important. We all know, as people who work, who earn a higher than average salary, who might be targeted if we were at fault in causing, say, an auto accident or some other way in which we, personally caused bodily injury to someone. by accident, but that makes us a targetable lawsuit. And by the way, that's a much greater chance of being sued for something like that than there is being sued for the dental for doing our dentistry. So we think of an umbrella policy as saying, okay, I've got an auto insurance policy, it's got liability, I've got a homeowner insurance policy, it's got personal liability. I bought $1 million umbrella policy in case the liability limits on those underlying policies are exhausted because of a very serious injury that I allegedly caused. And I'm good. But what I like to see in an umbrella policy, and where I've seen the biggest claims, is if you can get an umbrella, a true umbrella policy that also includes uninsured and underinsured auto coverage. Because say that you were out driving and you got rear-ended by another driver. And let's say you hurt your back or neck or some other injury that's going to prevent you from practicing dentistry for a while or maybe even forever. How much insurance do you think that person that hit you has?
I mean, whatever their liability insurance is. I mean, I don't even know how much some policies go. I know what mine does, but I don't know what theirs. But I mean,
Yeah.
they at least have liability insurance.
They might, and they might not. In Texas alone, there's a huge number of drivers out on the street that don't have auto insurance.
Oh, yeah.
And even if they do, state minimum limits that most people carry if they have a car is like $25,000 per person bodily injury.
Really?
And you can drive a car with that low limit of liability. And so why I like an umbrella that has uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage, and why I've seen some really huge claims from it, is that in that scenario, if you're not at fault, if you're injured at the hands of another person, their insurance coverage is probably never going to be enough to cover your loss if you can no longer practice. It's a huge loss. But if you have uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage on an umbrella policy in $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million, your insurance is going to act as theirs.
Wow.
And very few umbrella policies have the uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage to it. It's something additional, and you do have to pay for it, but it's not very expensive, especially in the program that we put together for dentists. So it's something that I really like to see.
I'm just curious here because we're definitely going to have to get you back and talk more about this, because after we log off here, I'll probably need to talk to you about this for myself. And I'm pretty sure not other dentists will have the same thing. But when you have an umbrella policy like this, could it extend to like the rest of, I mean, is it just like for one person? Can it extend for the whole family? I mean, my kids are still young, but I do have a lot of friends who, their kids just got a driver's license, right?
Yeah, and it extends to the whole family.
Oh,
and that's, on the other side, the side where you are considered at fault. You didn't do anything. It was your kids.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you could be really responsible, but like your kids could do something that could really affect the whole family finances there.
Yes, on the culpability end, where the umbrella is kicking in to protect you because you've allegedly are responsible for the injury, it's often family members that are the genesis. It's the kids at the lake house with the boat, or the jet skis, or
you can only ground them so long, but that's still not going to pay the bills.
I know. I tell you now, my kids are older now, but at one point, Terry and I bought a house on the creek in Richardson, and Richardson, and it was about a 30-foot drop off the back into the creek, and we had a fence. And I looked at it and I go, okay, we got 4 boys, and they're gonna have friends over. We either need to sell this house or we need to increase the umbrella. Yeah.
Wow. Well, wow, Cal. So, guys, for those who are watching right now, hopefully you got a lot of information, and I've been lucky. I've actually heard this firsthand as Cal counseled me on difficult situations, and I still use the exact verbiage, the exact style he just laid out. I use that now working with patients, but man, we just got a bonus right there, right? Like that's something that I did not know. We're definitely going to talk more about that. But if you don't have an umbrella policy, if you don't have a relationship where you can actually call up your insurance provider and just have a talk, right? Have a talk with them. If you don't have that relationship, then you're truly missing out. And so for those who want to explore that, also want to know about what they're lacking as far as coverage goes, God, what's the best way to reach out? Because you have an amazing team, and guys, you know, if you need some Kyle time, I'm sure you could get it, but the rest of the team is amazing as well. So what's the best way for them to start the process and start the connection?
Well, they can always email at www.advisor@wallacesig.com. And then go to our website, which is www.insurance4dds.com, and that's the number 4. So insurance4dds.com. Or they can always call 972-663-5190. And I've got a team of now 20 people in the office who are very, very happy to help, and all know what you do and love to help you do it better.
Kyle, well, thank you so much again for being a part of the group and for jumping on and sharing all that. And guys, if you have any questions, please, later on, put it in the comments section. And then what I'll do is I can reach out to Kyle because I will be calling him soon because I think I need to talk about this umbrella policy myself. So again, whether it's that, whether it's anything else, whether it's just needing some advice, please reach out because Kyle and his team, wealth of knowledge. So Kyle, thank you so much for jumping on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Guys, take care, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks. Bye.